Hey guys, today I'm going to go through some patient rights. Um, Most of the class, we talk about things that we need to do as healthcare providers. And this is the same way in that we need to make sure that patients, number one, know what their rights are and that we allow them access to that right, I guess you could say. So there are 8 of them. The first one is information disclosure. And that simply means that they have the right to, um, for us to give them true and accurate information about their diagnosis, their prognosis, treatment options, costs, and then rules for that facility so that they can make an informed decision. Okay. There's a few parts of this that need to be explained. That understandable information that is extremely important. I cannot stand in front of a patient and tell them um, what their diagnosis is and what their treatment is in these huge long words without breaking it down so that they can understand it. Okay. So, not only do I need to give them that information, give them the diagnosis, but I need to explain it to them in whatever terms that it takes for them to understand it. Okay. Um, if I were trying to explain to you, someone who's in your first year of taking medical classes, versus a senior that's taken, every medical class that Rensselaer Central offers, my explanation would be a little bit different. Okay, I could use some medical terminology when I'm talking to that senior that's had um, all the classes. They understand that medical terminology a little bit more than what you guys do in your first year. So something, the way I explain something to you right now, as far as an injury or an illness or a treatment, will be totally different than I might explain it to you when you're a senior after you've gone through all these classes. Okay. So I have to talk to them about their diagnosis and what's wrong, what the problem is, what's going on with them. Also, their prognosis. Okay. Prognosis isn't a word that we've talked a lot about in class, but prognosis is basically kind of a projection for how well they will do with treatment. Okay. Someone with a mild ankle sprain, I can tell them, you likely will be playing basketball, soccer, football, wrestling in the next couple of weeks. Okay. That's their prognosis. They should heal very rapidly. Someone with an ACL tear, I've got to tell them it's going to be probably 4 to 6 months at the minimum before you're doing too much athletically. Okay. That's their prognosis. Their treatment, of course, different treatment options, whether it's chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, just some physical therapy. Okay. Treatment options vary significantly. Costs, you have to be upfront. You can't just say, oh, you need this MRI, and not tell them that it's going to cost them a couple $1,000s. Okay. And then facility rules. If there's any little protocol, any little rules, any steps that they have to take um, with having their treatment in your facility, then you have to let them know about that. The second one, choice of providers and plan. Okay. So basically, they have the right to have a variety of people that they see for their medical needs and insurance options to choose from. Okay, so this is basically something that patients don't necessarily like to think about a lot of times, but it's that right to getting a second opinion. Okay. Um, for the most part, people are pretty loyal. And so if I start off with a particular doctor, I don't feel that it's right to go to another one and get another opinion and then maybe end up going with that one. Okay. But that is always our right. Um, as a high school sophomore, freshman, sophomore, I learned this very quickly. Okay. And I still struggle with it sometimes, but I was a sophomore when I tore my ACL. And I went to a doctor who told me, I would need to have an MRI in a couple of days, and then I would get the results in about a week. Then I had another doctor that worked with an athletic trainer that came to my high school and said, "Oh, no, 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 you shouldn't have to wait that long. Um, you can go and get the results tomorrow if you want from your MRI." Well, it was just kind of sneaky and underhanded, and I didn't really feel particularly comfortable with that second doctor. I went ahead and got the results because, like you all, I didn't want to wait to find out whether I truly had an ACL tear or not. But came down to who I was going to have the surgery with and who I was going to put all of my treatment in. I felt much more comfortable with the first guy, so that's who I went with. Okay, we were upfront and honest with both of them that we had seen the other one, and that we would be making a decision for treatment. So that was something that I like to tell kids a lot of times, because just because that's who you start with doesn't mean, if you don't feel comfortable or you don't like the treatment options or whatever, you have that right as a patient to have a second opinion. Access to services. Okay. This just guarantees access to number one, be able to have medically necessary treatments, medically necessary services, and then the continuity of care from one facility to another. So, an example of this would be if you come to our hospital and you have an X-ray taken, because you come to the ER and you have an X-ray taken, and then the ER doctor says, "Oh my goodness, you broke your tibia. We need to get you to an ortho." So they send you to an ortho, and the ER is responsible for kind of communicating with that ortho, okay, allowing them to see the X-rays, whether it means copying a disc and giving you the disc to take to that new doctor, or that second doctor having access to just see right into the facility, okay. But that way you can have a continuity of care. So that way it's not like you go to the ER and you get an X-ray and then they send you to another doctor and you have to go to that second doctor and get another X-ray. It's sharing things that are needed to be shared. It's not sharing with every single person, but sharing with all those people that are in your on your healthcare team. Participation in treatment decisions. This is a pretty simple, straightforward one. Basically just saying that you have the right as the patient to decide what you want to do, what decisions you want to make, whether you want to have treatment, you want to just refuse treatment, whether you want to try and cast for a while, or whether you want to go straight to surgery. You certainly, most surgeons aren't going to just let you do surgery just because you want surgery, but most surgeons should give you an option, give you several options for treatment, explain why one treatment might be better than another, or why they might recommend one more than another, but ultimately let you decide. Okay, this happened a lot when I was working in orthopedics. We would have sometimes people that weren't necessarily super healthy otherwise, other than their orthopedic stuff, and they would decide that the damage that it could potentially do to their heart, therefore their life, wasn't worth having a perfectly straight wrist. That maybe they were okay with casting it and it being a little bit crooked if it kept them alive. Okay. But those are just decisions that you as a patient and your family have to make. And so that's your right to decide what is best for you. The next one, the fifth one, is respect and non-discrimination. So this is simply having the right to receive good quality, respectful care from all members of the healthcare team. Okay. Um, Sometimes it can be a little difficult because we might have a patient that doesn't speak any English. And rather than it be easy, maybe to just kind of brush that person off because the communication barrier makes things difficult, we have to find a way to give them the same considerate, respectful care that we would anybody else. Okay, every single person on that healthcare team has to give that same respectful care. So one way that we've gone about doing that is through a program called Marty, that we call Marty anyway at the hospital. Um, and it used to be years and years ago, we would have one lady that would work down in registration, and she would come down and translate for nearly all the Spanish speaking patients, which got to be crazy because there's more and more Spanish speaking patients in our community, and she couldn't keep up. Not to mention that she doesn't even work for the hospital anymore, but um, it just wasn't feasible. So we bought some computers. They're actually iPads on a stand, and you log in kind of like a FaceTime, and you're FaceTiming with the translator. So I've got the patient right here with me. We're both looking at the iPad screen. I ask a question to the translator then translates it to the patient. Patient answers the question to the translator tells me the answer. Okay. Certainly not the smoothest. It's not as easy as just you and I talking, but it certainly gives um, that patient that right to have respectful, considerate care and understand what's going on with that visit. The next one is confidentiality of health information. This should be a pretty simple one by now, but basically their information, their healthcare information, their payment information, their medical history, all those things, they have a right to have them kept private. Okay. This is HIPAA. In and of itself, it's HIPAA. The other thing that they have the right to is the right to request a medical chart. So I request my medical chart, and I can read every single thing that's on the medical chart. And then I can look at it and I can say, oh goodness, this isn't right. That was my right shoulder that I had surgery on in 1995. It wasn't my left. And so I can tell the facility that I would like to have this changed. Okay. So I can review the record. I can make corrections to it. Now I can't just change anything I want to, but if there's something that's important that's wrong, we can get that corrected. And then also to just have a copy of it for yourself. The next one is complaints and appeals. Complaints and appeals, we hear that often enough that I think we probably understand what that means. Okay. But basically, we can resolve differences with healthcare plans, providers, and facilities. So that means you have when you go to the doctor and they charge you $200 for that office visit, and then insurance comes back and says, nah, don't think so. That shouldn't have been the doctor that you saw or whatever, or they don't agree with the treatment, and they deny it, we can appeal that. We can argue with it. We can say, well, this and this and this reason is why that we did this. Okay. Sometimes doctors help with the appeal process. I know that just this winter, when my dad had his rotator cuff surgery, before we got to the point of having surgery, the doctor recommended an MRI, and then the insurance company kind of jerked them around and didn't really approve the MRI for a long time. So my dad, being the impatient man that he is, looking forward and knowing that he needed to get in the field to plant his soybeans and corn this year, he said, never mind, I'm just going to pay for it out of pocket. So he went ahead and paid for it out of pocket. Well, in the meantime, the insurance company said, no, we're not going to do this MRI because you need to do some physical therapy first. So the doctor was willing to appeal that, and he wrote a letter and called the insurance company and talked to the insurance company and explained why the MRI needed to be done right away, and the MRI ended up getting paid for by insurance. Okay, so a lot of times it's you, your doctor, and the facility working together to file those complaints and appeals. The last one is consumer responsibilities. And there's multiple parts to this. We want consumers to be involved in their care. Okay, we want you to make those decisions. We also want you to be cost conscious. So you can't just, and I've heard many, many people say this over the years, well, it doesn't make a difference to me whether I pay a $45 copay to the doctor or I pay a $45 copay to the ER, so I'm just going to go straight to the ER and then I can get an answer now. Well, that's not being very cost conscious, because doctor visits cost insurance, no matter who the insurance is, a lot less than an ER visit is. So while it doesn't make a difference to you, the big picture, it makes a huge difference. So that's not making a very cost conscious decision. Okay, so that's something important to keep in mind. Another thing is that patients are expected to actually share information about their health with providers. Okay, if you come in complaining that you have had a horrible cough and that you can't breathe, you're short of breath, but you fail to mention that you've smoked for 10 years, that's not being upfront and honest about your health with the providers. We might go dig deep and order all kinds of testing and everything else to get the bottom of this cough, when in fact it's just a smoker's cough. Okay. Um, the other thing is you are expected to follow directions. Okay, so you come in and for the smoker's cough, and let's say that you do not disclose the fact that you've been a smoker for 10 years, and then the doctor gives you some treatments to do, and you say, well, that's stupid, I don't need those, it's just a smoker's cough, and you don't take the medicine, you don't follow the directions. Okay, when you are engaging in this, if you're wanting the healthcare provider to follow all these rights, then you need to do your share of it by following directions, being compliant with treatment plans. Okay, and then the last part is just making a good effort and good intention to make some arrangements to pay your bills. Not everyone is expected to hand over, $500 every time they go to the ER as soon as they walk in, but you need to have the intention to pay that bill. Okay, whether it's $10 a month for however long that takes, or whatever, but you need to have that intention to pay the bill. It's not just racking up medical bills and letting them go because someone else is going to write them off or someone else is going to pay them. Okay. Those are the 8 patient rights. That's all we're going to do for today. So just stay tuned with the Canvas with some review activities looking at patient rights, looking at legal and ethical issues, and we'll get some real life practice stuff going with that. Let me know if you have any questions. Talk to you soon.